All right. So this is Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia, and this particular episode is on finding your life purpose. And I am your host, Chad Everett Broshears, also the author of The Human Manual, and that is our sponsor today is The Human Manual. So just a quick little bit of housekeeping is that just to let you know the disclaimer value, which I actually do have in the first video of the series. So just please go to that if you need a disclaimer. And that is to quickly just tell you that I do not intend to come to disrupt your medical advice or to be medical advice in any way, nor psychological or anything of that fact. I'm merely speaking from my philosophy and also my education of growing up in the wilds of suburbia. And if you're in an emergency, please seek out emergency help. If you are seeking doctor or medical help, please look elsewhere. All right. So this is a philosophical viewpoint on life as well as an educational direction on how to start seeing the world a little differently so we can better help address our desires and live into our desired expectations. So let's get started. All right. So life purpose. First off, so you understand where I'm coming from. I am not speaking from a divine position. I am not speaking from even needing to use the concept of a divine position. No godly experience necessary in this conversation. I'm telling you how to actually create your own life purpose. So this is not something preordained or handed down to you on high or anything like that. All right. And this is how we kind of affiliate or understand our life purpose. So I have a self-identified, self-created life purpose. I realized that I had a skill set. Now, the development and understanding of life purpose falls right into this. So I'm just going to go right after it. All right. So as a young person, I really didn't see the world like a lot of my peers. I've always been very compassionately directed. I really established this very well at a young age, empathetically with animals. And I branched that into my interactions with people, first with my family, with a deep desire to really connect with them. That's empathy, to connect with them so I can understand the way that they're experiencing life. Really at an early age was for my own survival, or at least, genetically presumed need for survival. And I started identifying specific behaviors and patterns that I could feel the way that they were feeling to an extent. When they expressed something, I was very connected to the way they would express things. I've been told that I have the gift of gab, but I think it's a little bit deeper than that. You can always just run at the mouth all day long and not everyone wants to hear it. But if in the conversation you're connected with the person, usually that they want to hear you run at the mouth because you also give them the privilege to run at their mouth and let them be a heard part of the conversation. So my desire to connect with people gave me the abilities that I have at this point. Now, people tell me, all kinds of things that are descriptive values of who I am. And most of the time they're pleasing to hear that I'm being, accepted in some way. And sometimes they're a little upsetting to hear because one of the more upsetting things that I hear when people describe me is telling me how smart I am. And I've covered this well in another video, but just a brief recap. And the reason why I don't feel why that's more upsetting than honoring. Yes, it feels good for a moment, but mostly it makes me feel less than desirable simply because they're putting me in a position that they themselves feel they can't achieve. So that's why it's, because it's like a category, you're special because you're really smart. And I wish I was like that rather than looking for how they can, become similar. I don't see myself as being that smart. I see myself as being very interested, and that's it. I'm just extremely interested in things, as well as connecting with people. I also understand that you can read a book and die that death that the author intended to, or you can live the life the author intended you to read into, which is how readers believe that, or they know that they can die 1,000 deaths, read 1,000 books, you'll live 1,000 lives, right? That's what it's intending to say. Mine's far beyond that in the sense that I want to be able to live vicariously through everyone that I get the opportunity to. And that means that they get to live through their what they are willing to share with me. And it gives me a lot of lessons that I don't necessarily need to experience myself. Sometimes I purposely do experience those so I can better grasp the experience. But other times, you know, I don't really need to know what it's like to live in my car to know that there's a lot of action necessary to keep me from that. Although I've come close. I really don't desire to have that happen in my life. I'd rather just be in action and find out where I'm falling short of my desires. So you see that that particular development that I went through gave me a lot of insights, and it has created something that people will tell me, and I hear it on a daily basis whenever I share my philosophy and my developmental education with people, that this is my life purpose. Now, when I hear that, I usually get curious to make sure that they understand that it's a self-developed life purpose, and not preordained or divine, so that they themselves are also back into the, I can do this with my own life too, or I can do something with my own life. I actually discussed the actual developmental consciousness that I'm talking about, as far as, you know, why I don't like people calling me smart and things like that, or making it a big deal out of being intelligent. Where they're not something like that, where they self-identify they're not. I covered that in my past video on, oh, I forgot what it was called. No, I just had it. Oh, well, moving on. Just go through the video series on my other channel, on Chad Brochure's YouTube channel, and you'll find it there, or it'll come to me in a minute. But so for all of this, really, your life purpose is going to be based off a specific skill set that you're really good at something. All right. So if you're really good at talking with people, identifying certain things with people, then that'll be part of how you feel really good and well placed in your group, or your tribe, or your society, or whatever. Whatever you're most easily talented at, whatever you're skilled at. And you may not be able to directly identify a specific thing, like, say, a savant. We don't normally look at a savant for what it took for them to develop to that point. Usually we look at it and say there was no developmental precursor, environmental precursor, and we believe that that person is just genetically gifted to be that way. Not saying that that's not a possibility. I just think that sometimes we misqualify. Like, you know, maybe a child just didn't have some things that got in the way as far as their development. Maybe they weren't told they had certain restrictions, and they didn't live into certain restrictions, and therefore they can play the piano after just watching it, right? Really, with that, I would say the observation is that they watch what keys are being stroked, they watch the body posture in the back, and they really paid attention to how to read paper, the music on paper, or however that savant is recognized. I'd just say that that's a child that, or a person that did not have a lot of stuff going through their mind, you know, trying, or, you know, competing for attention space, and they were completely focused on what they were hearing and had nothing distracting the auditory sensory as well as the visual sensory and the cognitive reasoning. And all of a sudden, it was one time they had to hear it, and all of a sudden they know how to do it through mimicry. That is one factor that can be there. Now, I'm not saying it's an impossibility to have a true savant, or that may actually be a categorizing factor for a savant. I just find it that it just is extremely present and interested. So that's my perspective on it. I find that when you call someone a savant, that you displace your own abilities and potential to be just as good as that person at a reasonable timeline. You discredit your own, you know, abilities by categorizing somebody else as something that you're not. Now, in this context, saying savant, or, you know, even then, like, you're really intelligent. You know, like I've said before, and I'll say it every time, I don't feel I am that intelligent. I don't feel that I belong in the concept of Mensa or anything like that. Nothing like that. I'm just really, really very interested. And it's kind of a miscategorizing factor when people call me very smart. I just let them know that I'm just extremely interested in things. And that's the category I feel comfortable being in. So I am not a savant, not in my opinion, by any means, or stretch the imagination. And I'd argue and debate it all day if someone called me that. So as far as your life purpose, you see, I'm painting a picture around your skill set. Now, when you're in your skill set, you're identified both by yourself. You identify how easily you move through things. If you have no comparison to how other people struggle, you don't know if you're really good at it or not. You just know that you're moving through it if you know no other value as far as how long it is predicted to take or anything. You have no basis for how fast it should take or how effective it should be or anything like that. You just know that you're doing something for a particular outcome. It's whenever it comes into play that somebody else is not as good, or you find out most people that you've heard of doing whatever it is, like say it's typing or whatever that is, that's that really low end concept of life purpose. Not a lot of people want to say that I'm just really good at typing in life, but that's a compound amount of skills that make you feel really efficient at something. And that efficiency commonly brings a great deal of joy to the person because they're accepted very easily in their group, whoever their identified group is, or even out groups that identify a particular skill set that they themselves also covet or wish to have, or wish to be as proficient in, especially if it is less time that you've spent there. It's like you know something special. And what you know is a particular structure or pattern that you're equipped at doing that makes it more efficient for you and makes you that much more practical at doing that thing. And you usually get praised by people for doing it, which makes you feel good, as well as if there's a specific timeline of expectations. If you get it done in 1 week, what's supposed to take somebody else an entire month or 2 months or even a year to do, most people really do appreciate that particular skill set, and they give you that kind of like-minded result, which is you're something special. And that will likely add to the idea of what a purpose is, where you could look at it and be like, you know what, people really do like what I do there. This is more of a subconscious qualifier, is where you find yourself easily accepted is where you feel most comfortable most of the time. So you'll spend more time trying to be more comfortable and how life can be easier or more appreciated. So your life purpose. Now, why is it easier for some than not others? Actually, Ashley put this one to me. My girlfriend asked me to do a video on this. So I'm going to read her particular outline for this. So why is it easier for some and not others? I hope that I covered that at this point. As far as early on, you started expressing certain types of behaviors that were accepted and encouraged. Now, I already got a little tickle. So how do I start? Well, if what you're doing now doesn't seem to be as satisfying for you, or if you can't tell if it's that satisfying, try to envision yourself, 20 years from now, looking back from all of the actions you've been doing at this point. So if it's been working a lot, you're likely going to continue to work a lot for the next 20 years unless you have a really well-structured plan to not do that, right? So early retirement, or reach a level, like if you're an entrepreneur and you want to get your business to a certain degree, that you can let it go on autopilot, then you'll work towards that, but you have to make sure it happens. A lot of times we get stuck in the rut of action. And nothing's really wrong with that. But if you want to be out of your business and have your business running and making money for you and earning a living for you while you're off doing whatever the hell it is you want with minimal effort, you need to make sure that's a strong plan you put into place and you're not going to fall into it. And in the meantime, you'll get addicted to what it takes in order to develop your business. Now, you do get addicted in actions, even in actions you don't really care for. I'll speak from my construction experience. There are times when I long for my days that I did construction. But when I did construction, I felt fairly good about the physical activities and the reward for what we accomplished. But for the most part, I wanted out of it because it was really hard on my body and it didn't pay all that well. So I felt like I was killing myself for a minimal amount of pay. But every once in a while, I catch myself kind of missing the feeling of hard work in that context, and also the reward of looking back after I've created something and saying, yep, I did that. That's mine. I created that and I was a part of it, or whatever, and a group mindset of how we all accomplish something. You can also find a feeling, a sensation of purpose in that. I felt it at a point in time. But that's only in retrospect, looking back at it. But when I was there, I really didn't appreciate it as much as I do now, because I'm not experiencing all the less than desirable sensations that went with it. So I long for, some of the physical rewards of it, and or some of the camaraderie I had with the people I worked with. But other than that, I'm very glad that I'm not out there throwing blocks anymore and mixing mortar and picking up thrushes and all the rest of this, and doing all the work you have to do whenever it comes to construction. It's just a nostalgia that I go through. Although I have spoke to a friend of mine recently about working with him for the developmental purposes and an apprentice, as well as some of the financial benefits as well. And that was fueled partly by the looking back and, the nostalgia. And the other is this guy is just an awesome guy. If you want to start finding mentors and accelerating your maturity, pick people that have a certain degree of outlook on life that you find that's very mature, and try to get trained in it as best you can. So for my buddy Chip, yeah, buddy, talking about you. All right. So moving on from the life purpose and how to get started, I'll just kind of summarize that again real quick, is just reflect on what you've been doing for the last 5 years and just ask yourself if you want to do that for the next 20. It doesn't sound reasonable to measure 5 against 20, but what you've been doing for the last 5 years is likely what you'll do for the next 20 unless something happens. Most of the time, it'll be some outside influence that creates an intervention. But sometimes that influence can actually be self-generated, like my own. I created my own intervention. I just decided I didn't want the life of the people I worked around. Nothing's wrong with their life. I just didn't desire it enough. And it was the job itself started to get really uncomfortable for me, because I knew that if I kept going after it just to make sure I saved a certain amount of money and my 401k turned into a certain thing, and, I had enough money to do certain vacations and also my bills were paid, then I would kind of, trade my life away for something that I really wasn't happy in doing. So I looked at it from that perspective. I actually used a 3.5-year timeline. The first time I walked away from the first major career, which is power generation, development, and distribution. So with that statement, I just had 3.5 years. There was a big hiring gap between myself and the other people. So it was over 15 years of difference between the newer employees and the seasoned, soon to retire employees. And I realized that I didn't want to have that become my life. Again, there's nothing wrong with it. It just didn't line up with what I want as a fulfilled life. Sure, I'd have financial success. I'd have all kinds of interesting, things with a fairly secure job that would likely be around the entire time until I retired, and be able to find jobs easily or fairly easily in the power industry. But I decided that it wasn't for me. Nothing's wrong with it. My brother still works in that company, or works in a power company, and he's a supervisor now. He's enjoying his position, and he worked hard for it. He deserves it. But it's not my walk. It's his. It's other people's walk. So I looked at it from what I experienced and said to myself, and actually just started analyzing it and thought to myself, is this really what I want to do with my life? And I realized it wasn't. Now, I'm a hard turnaround guy. It doesn't take much for me to turn around. I also live close to my means. I have no reason to live outside of that. So yeah, I have a fairly newer vehicle, but it's not a Mercedes sitting in my driveway. I don't want something extravagant like that, really. It's too close to my means, which means that, or it's actually, it can supersede my means with, everything else. It's not worth it, because that'll kill my passion. It'll kill my self-designed, self-directed purpose. It'll kill it, because it would stress it. If I'm not making a certain amount of money to make those bills, this negative factor comes in, and this urgency of something that I'm not doing needs to be done. And ultimately, I would end up really just drastically damaging my viewpoint on the thing that I loved. I experienced this the first time I left corporate America. I left the power industry and went right into my own company. Green every which way you can imagine, very green to everything. I had a great mentor, wonderful mentor, still great friends with him. But there were certain things that were missing that he wasn't able to really train me in. He trained me in how to run the business as one of his employees through my own business. That was the way it was. We were subcontractors working for a different company. And it wasn't enough, and it affected my passion because I was immature. Now, the great things about it is nothing's wrong, because I developed at an extremely rapid rate. It's amazing how fast you're willing to learn things if you're starving, right? It's amazing how fast you're willing to learn things from a lot of different things, right? When you don't have something, you have a great motivator to get your ass in gear. But I realized, though, from self-assessment, that the power industry was not where I wanted to be. And then, moving on, why am I looking for a life purpose? Well, this is an interesting thing. When I find that people that consider suicide do not feel a strong life purpose, or their life purpose is not being met and they're failing. Is usually what's there, unless there's a mental illness that's actually far beyond this kind of rational context. But I've found this in my own experiences with the gentleman that killed himself in my home February of last year, 2014. He didn't really have a strong life purpose. And some of the identifying markers were, he got married and decided to have an affair on his wife. He had his own business. He had a lot of things going for him, but he was also wrecking his business with his behavior. And he didn't have a real strong end life purpose. He more had the position to just make money, and he thought that would be the thing that fixed his family life. It's not always the case. So, yeah, life purposes are valuable. This is also one of the reasons why people retire. They commonly live about 3 years. I experienced this with my own father. He didn't live 3 years after he retired. He passed. Now, of course, he was an alcoholic, but once he didn't have his purpose of having to show up to work, something that actually gave him the sensation of fulfillment. He did something with his hands. He acquired a specific thing. He was praised for it. Once that group dynamic was gone and he had nothing but his own devices left to him, he really fell into his vices. And it ultimately, his health collapsed around him very quickly. Life purpose was gone. Now, for the people that retire that actually live long, healthy, happy lives are the ones that pick up strong habits and strong hobbies. They're the ones that really do put a lot of effort into surviving and living a long, happy, fruitful life. But that's because there's a purpose there. They reallocate a purpose. I find that it's actually faster for people that are the jack of all trades and masters of none nonsense quote. I'm not an advocate of that quote, by the way. There is a mastery that person's capable of that the specialists are not. And specialists fall very short very quickly with the mastery factor that the jack of all trades has. And that is adaptability. If you're a jack of all trades and a master of none, I must be the quote guy by now, because I love throwing up those quotes. Even though I feel cliche and idiotic doing it, I still feel it's beneficial. I chuckle inside when I do it. But the people that are masters of none and jack of all trades are masters of adaptation. I myself am a master of adaptation. I am able to adapt to so many things just because I've been practicing so many things. So the next time somebody tells you a jack of all trades and a master of none, like, no, actually you're wrong by 1 point. And that is they're a master of adaptation, or they are much more capable of being masters of adaptation. They have been skill set for adaptation, where other people focus on becoming a specialist in one thing, and then they can't get a job after that. If they lose it, or they have to wait years before they can get another job to the equivalent value of what they lost, like a CEO of a specific type of company, all right? It's likely only that you're going to want to be a CEO of another company, or even if you apply for a lower position, you're not likely going to get the job because you are therefore becoming a threat to the current CEO. It's not always a fact, but it's a very strong possibility because it's a human factor. So life purpose, it's a valuable thing. All right. Remember, part of your life purpose is actually a large part of your life purpose is where you feel you are most accepted and being good at something. Right. So even if you're a comedian and you do it as a professional comedian, you may not feel like it's your life purpose unless there's a certain message that your comedy carries. And if there is a certain message your comedy carries, you're likely to feel more of a purpose than if you were just accepted for being funny. So you see what you do with a message with a specific skill set. Now, if your message is, I want to eradicate world hunger, then if you have a job that is not necessarily in the vein for eradicating world hunger, but more towards being able to give you financial abilities to help at least donate to charity, you're donating to charity with a specific purpose. And that purpose is feeling fulfilled a little bit every time you donate. And the more time you get to spend in maybe soup kitchens and things like that may also up that factor. the quotient of purpose quotients, if you will. I've adopted that from the IQ factor, which is intelligence quotients. I have formulated maturity quotients, 8 different areas of maturity quotients, all creating a different value for a particular intelligence and maturity, or a particular developmental factor of maturity. So your MQ, and this is your PQ, right? Purpose quotients. So it's a fairly complex position, but ultimately, though, it is still a position that is cultivatable. You can actually cultivate this. You can find that whatever you're doing currently may not necessarily fit your desired purpose, but ultimately it can lead up to being your strong purpose. Now let me check something here briefly. Yep, that's what I wanted. Okay, good. I had to check and make sure I was using the right microphone on this recording. Okay, so if you feel like you don't have one, because again, this is Ashley's structure, and she did a great job on it. I really appreciate her, helping out. Do I have one? Do I have a life purpose? Yeah, you do. Somewhere along the lines, no matter who you are, there was something that you decided would be good to do with your life. Now, you might have put that idea to bed. A lot of us have. It's like life gets in the way. You haven't found an outlet to that particular desire, and you kind of just wrote it off to, you put it to bed before it actually got to take hold. Now, the great thing about it is you planted it into a soil. That soil just may not have been the proper soil, mental space, to take root and to start blossoming into a passion, but it's still there. You haven't addressed it yet. So what's great about this is, one, if you can't find it, great. You can do some self-assessments. You can start considering where you feel really accepted or you feel really good, right? You're like, I am good at this. I like it. I like doing this a lot. Maybe you haven't sold much and you got a position in sales, and all of a sudden you start being good at sales, or you start really getting good at selling things to people. And then you realize, ooh, I feel really good in this. I feel really good. Now, of course, you feel good because you had a degree of oppression against, or the lack of development, and then you overcame that lack of development, and now you're starting to feel proficient at something you've been struggling at. That typically gives us a reward sensation where we say, oh, here's some of those endorphins I was looking for. Yeah, baby, I'm in a good mood now. High five. Right? Absolutely, that's there. That's part of the reasons we get those good sensations. Actually, I'd say almost solely the reason why we get a good sensation. I'm not one to buy into the divine concepts, so that's not this guy. I'm not doing that. But what I am for is self-development. I find that divine concepts also fall into the idea of you're only allowed certain things. If it wasn't preordained, wasn't written in stone, or wasn't done before you, or wasn't written into the storybook of your life, then you're not allowed that. I'm not a fan of that at all, because I know that it doesn't matter what it is. Now, of course, this goes deeper, your purpose and values and all the rest of this, because it's not only discover your purpose, it's how do you develop it, and how do you get to the point of self-sustaining, and then we can have the conversation about legacy. So you see, I've surpassed identification. I have surpassed application. I have surpassed telling the world what my purpose, my self-developed purpose is. I've gotten through that, and now I'm in the legacy portion. It's simple as far as legacy is concerned, but there is a developmental program for that, and I am actually currently writing the legacy program, how to develop a legacy. And it is predicated off of, and this is the freebie stuff, man. It's off of, first and foremost, is your purpose, right? Self-developed purpose. What is it that you have at this point that motivates you into your life? Because your legacy is what you leave, but you have to build it, right? So you get a mastery of your purpose. You'll get an absolute mastery of your purpose, and no one will ever, ever, ever doubt that you have identified that is your purpose once they actually hear you talking about it. There's no doubt. And then once you get to that point and you're truly working and you're deeply and diligently working on your legacy, people have, you'll just ooze purpose. Like it's just people meet you and they'll be like, God, there's something about you. We can tell you're up to something. And it is so attractive. It is so enrolling, right? Like speaking with Dr. Danny, right? Like that woman just exuberates purpose, right? You can't have a conversation without her or with her where you don't recognize that woman she is fully vested in her purpose, her self-developed purpose. There's plenty of people like that. So, and I'll have more guests on. That's one of the commonalities of these guests is where they have self-identified purpose and they started to excel at it. All right. So this is mine. Mine's the human manual. That's the vehicle that gives me my outlook and my outlet for my legacy, which is the compound mature derivative, or the development, the caterpillar into the butterfly, right? The caterpillar is my purpose. My legacy is the butterfly. All right. So if you want to live that kind of life, then you got to get started. What I do is help people ease through the transition process so you don't have to just abandon your job and jump into the lake of fire on this one, right? Out of the frying pan and into the fire. Now you don't have to do that with this. Now this is how you do maturely move through it so that if you have a family, you don't feel trapped by your family and you can't pursue what you want to do and love in your life. That's in the Mastering You in Business, right? Or there's a couple of different Mastering You series. So Mastering Your Legacy, that's a sexy one. All right, guys. Well, as far as finding your life purpose, I hope I've given you some insight on that. And I'm hoping to hear back from you guys. Please comment as often as you like. If you like what you've seen, if you feel value in what you've just heard or watched, comment below, share it as often as you like, email it, social media. I don't care how you want to share it, just share it, right? If you don't agree with some of the things that I've said, comment below. Let's have a dialogue about it. Let's have some discourse. We can even debate if you want. But you'll find that I'm a challenging person to debate because I really want to get it from your side. So, yeah, I don't really want to make you wrong necessarily. And nor do I really want, I want to grow and develop. So I'll leave a lot of that stuff at the door unless it's formulated for a debate. All right, guys. Well, and even then, like I said, I'm kind of hard to debate because I like reason. I like it. Relation. Okay, guys. So again, this is Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia, and this is Finding Your Life Purpose. And I am your host, Chad Everett Broshears. By all means, feel free to share this again and comment below. And just don't forget, subscribe to the channel and you'll get the daily updates. We should be broadcasting at least 7 days a week, at least one episode a day. Sometimes we'll do some bonus episodes, and the products that I'd mentioned earlier will be launched on November 1st, 2015, and the website will be developed beforehand. I don't have an exact date on that one just yet, but it will be launched in the next couple of weeks. Today is, September 24th, 2015, for those of you that aren't looking in the comment section or looking at the info section. So November 1st, 2015, these programs for the Mastering You in Relationships, the Mastering You in Business, and the Mastering Legacy will be available in November, as well as Mastering Your Purpose. Yeah, I got a lot of programs coming out, man. This is going to be a fun year. So anyway, thank you very much. Just pay attention to what's coming up in the near future. And if you like what you're hearing, I am always looking for more guests that are mastering themselves. And with that, thank you very much for watching the show. Have a great day.